Yeah, that's good. That's okay. Tomorrow shows the rest.
Tomorrow's the bris.
Yeah. Where it is. There it is. 7:30 meeting. It's a move to 7:30 upstairs.
Since a rough minute, yeah.
Not for me, it's beautiful. It's not it is.
Okay, we should get started. Okay, hold on a second. All right. Hi, Alex. How are you? Welcome, welcome. Okay, she'ela. Misha kone chayfetz misuyam. Uritzono shahamocher yidche et piraon hatashlum lizman meuchar yoter. So a person purchases a certain item of merchandise, and he asks the seller to delay his payment so that, because he says, I need a little bit more time to pay for the merchandise. Just watch your step.
Yeah.
V'hamocher muchan lazeh b'tenai sha'akone yosif bishvil hamtanat hamaot. And the seller says, okay, we'll create a layaway plan, but I expect you to pay more money. In other words, if you're expecting me to wait for the cash, I expect you to pay more. Hayim hamekach kayam kagon, is the sale valid? Kagon shekana b'mishicha u'ba'agba, meaning that the transaction was made, the guy took the item physically and brought it towards him to consummate a transaction. Okay, v'ndiyeshkan iser ribis lo nikna hamekach. Or do we say that because there was ribis present, basically the terms of the transaction were, I'll extend you credit as long as you pay me interest. So the whole term of the transaction was predicated on ribis. Is the sale then still final, or is the sale null and void? Like in other words, do we say that the sale is valid b'di'evid and the seller has to return the interest? Or do we say that no, the sale is null, such that either party can back out and say, listen, it was not a valid sale, and here's your item back, and give me my money back. Okay.
It's null and void.
So on the one hand, you could argue it's null and void, but on the other hand, normally what we say, let's say there's a standard loan. I lend you money with the expectation that you pay me back. I lend you 100 and I want 120 back. Okay, so there's no transaction there. There's no sale. It's done as a loan. So there we say that it's not, we can't say, okay, the loan is null and void because the loan was extended. You just have to, you just only have to pay me back 100.
I mean, the interest.
The interest is null and void, but the question is, what about the transaction itself? In other words, can either party demand a cancellation of the sale based on the fact, predicated on the fact that the sale was done illegally because interest was being charged for the sale?
Everybody knows that.
Everyone, the two parties know, but they may not know the halacha. So,
But in case where the interest is going to be paid back.
What do you mean it's going to?
If I say I'm lending you $100 and you would pay me back $120.
Yeah.
But when you pay me back, I'll give you back the 20, or I'll donate the 20s, or I'll use it. Like
Doesn't
if you lend
matter.
a Schulman.
Doesn't matter. It's just because you're doing a good deed, you can't surmount the prohibition of interest.
So you'd have to do a heteriska.
Well, a heteriska has limitations. We haven't really gone carefully through the laws of ribis in this class. But we did it with the Smichas Chaver program. And there are limitations to the heteriska, as far as when, people use it like, It's like they say people pop pills like it's candy. You can't abuse the heteriska either. In other words, there still is a prohibition in the Torah of lending money with interest. If you want to, anyone who wants to lend another Jew money, the lechatchila is always to lend it without interest, you know. And that's part of the chesed, is that you're foregoing the opportunity to make money somewhere else with that money. Yeah.
So I mean, I guess it's not for now, but where does it apply where it can't you? Is there places that you can't use a heteriska?
There are situations.
Based on what you just said, you really shouldn't use it.
It's not a lichatchila. It's not a lichatchila.
I mean, in
Everybody
finance,
uses it
banking,
as a lechatchila.
I know.
That's the problem.
It's a problem. Yeah.
I'm aware of that, but there's the loophole, there's a loophole, and you can.
Yeah.
You can't use it at the risk without a gross analysis of the situation.
Again, it depends on how commonly the person does it. So, for example, let's say a person is in the money lending business. So, if he's in the money lending, if he owns a bank and he's in the money lending business, and the only way that he can make a parnasa is if he lends the small percentage of his Jew. Like first of all, if a guy is running a business that is predicated on lending Jews money and getting interest back, that's a bad business model. He should not get into that business.
kind of
If
like
he-
gambling in a way. It's not a good business.
It's not a good business to get into. But let's say his primary business is lending non-Jews money. And once in a while, he'll get a Jewish client. So if that's his method of making parnasa, so then we would tell that person, okay, so on a one-time basis, on the occasional basis, as long as you know what you're doing, you can get a blanket heter to lend money with interest. But to say that should be the right.
First, preliminary to it.
Yeah.
So you could say the same thing for everything that we have the option to have like a principal. You know, well, money has to go, land has to go back. Well, if you do a principal, then these are all loopholes, or even for Pesach, we have that whole discussion.
Right,
which, you know,
right. So I
you have to
think,
get rid of any comment, you can't sell it to a guy really, but if you have to, you can sell it for Pesach.
yeah, and I agree with both of those statements. In other words, if you can lend money and arrange the repayment of the debt in such a way that it will not be interrupted by Shemitah, that's much better than relying on the principal. If you
single
can,
person who doesn't have much can probably get rid of all the helmets.
if you can eliminate your chametz before Pesach without having to rely on mechiras chametz, that's better. But there's a long-standing minhag to do the principal and to do mechiras chametz, even if you're getting rid of all of your chametz, because who knows, maybe there may be something that you forgot about. Also, nowadays, so many people own bottles of alcohol, yeah, scotch, and other spirits, and that's the reason why we do mechiras chametz, right? But
Scotch collections are very important.
no, I understand that, but it's like if the half a box of
You're machmir.
You're such a machmir. You're so religious, yeah. Right. But is the half a box of Cheerios that you have in the back of your cupboard, is it a mitzvah to sell that? Or would it be better to get rid of it before Pesach? Yeah,
Just say Cheerio to the Cheerios.
yeah, okay. Anyway,
What cereal to Rabbi
This is
takes?
like, this is like,
Back into the seven.
this is an interesting, you know. This is bringing out things that I was not aware of, that you don't, that, with the pila, things that you shouldn't do, you don't have to.
you don't have to, there's no reason why you should.
Throwing out food, it's not, wasting food.
You're not throwing it out, you're giving it to Esperanza or whoever, the housekeeper or whatever her name is. Okay. Okay. So to answer the question, so is the transaction b'di'evid, is it valid such that neither party can can nullify the transaction just because interest was charged. Now, the interest will have to, if a person asks the shaila, the interest will not be able to be collected. However, the question is on the sale. So anyway, tshuva, mekach shenasa be'isr, kagon shekana biyoker shahosef b'shiva mekach b'shvil amtanas maos, the yishkan iser ribis, imkana be'echad midarchei hakinyanim nikna hamekach. So the psak is that b'di'evid, the sale is a final sale, even when the seller is charging interest for delayed payment. Aval aser lo lakona l'shalim haribis l'mocher. But when we ask the shaila, the buyer cannot pay the added inflated amount, because since the stipulation was pay 100 now for the merchandise, or 150 if you spread it out over 6 months, you can't pay the extra $50. And you can tell the seller, I asked my rabbi, he said I can only pay you $100, right? So the guy may be upset, but if he's a frum yid, you have to take him. He can go and speak to the rabbanim. V'chein pasak ala peros be'isr. And by the way, this is one of the cases we saw in the Smichas Chaver program, where even in Eretz Yisrael, even in very frum circles, unfortunately, this has been a problem, because you walk down Mea Sharm and you see a sign on the Svarim store that says you can either buy, you can either buy the set of Svarim with one payment of 1,000 shekel, this whole set, or you can do a layaway and pay 100 shekels a month over the course of a year, and
Which will add up to more.
which of course it's because there's 12 months in a year.
Okay.
Okay, so that's a problem. Also, they also offer a pre-publication price. Pay $1,000 now for the set that'll come out Hanukkah, or you can wait until Hanukkah and buy it for its full retail price. That's also problematic, because there's an aspect of ribis. What you're doing is you're prepaying, you're extending a loan to the publisher so that he can finish his publication costs. And then, he's paying you back by giving you a set of svarim that's worth 1,200.
Probably that would be marketing thing, not necessarily
It-
collect interest, but it's ensure that the people buy, you entice them to buy it.
But even though it's marketing, but if the net result
That they pay
is
more
is
for
that
it.
they're paying less than its value, or they're paying more over the course of time, it's still a problem of ribis. Yeah.
Even if there's a risk factor that maybe it'll never get published or something like that, but,
The risks, when we talk about risk factor, that's where we talk about the heteriska. The heteriska, sometimes a more knowledgeable seller will say, I'm willing to sell you the item on layaway, but you have to sign a heteriska. That would be an example of a situation where, let's say I have Rahmanus
Right.
on the buyer, but I can't charge him the regular price because it's going to cost me money, since I have to pay back my vendors, my suppliers. So I have to charge you extra in order just to cover my costs.
it's
So-
kind of like an investment in.
Right. So there, sign a heteriska. There is an aspect of risk, because if I sell a guy a product on layaway, there's the potential that he won't be able to pay me back. Okay, fine. So that's a more valid heteriska. So, by the way, that's something that the poskim do discuss, is that in order for a heteriska to be more kosher, there still always has to be an element of risk involved, that you may, because what is the heteriska? You're basically saying, I'm not lending you money, I'm investing money with you. Well, when you invest money in an enterprise, there's risk. Yeah. Okay. Anyway,
Very interesting.
Actually, Rabbi, that goes for every loan. You loan someone money for a mortgage, you could default on the mortgage.
So,
And if you're a Jewish guy, then you can risk not getting all your money back.
Right.
So really, it's not lechatchila, what you're saying.
That you're still on this.
Does that remove lechatchila if it's a risk?
if it's the more realistic it is as an investment, the more that you can
I think you're
justify.
really- everything you can say is today when you're lending money, whether it's a mortgage company for an.
Not really, because since you have the law behind you, and it usually when you lend someone money, you secure the loan.
Right, but it's never.
It's never 100%, but if you secure a loan with a guy's property or his, then it's pretty solid.
Mhm.
Yeah. Anyway. But so he says, "Aval asr lokona l'shalom haribis lamocher," but the buyer cannot pay the interest. V'chein impasak al haperos be'isr. And similarly, if there was an agreement to purchase produce in a prohibited way, dahainu, meaning kodem shiyatza hashar v'lo haya lamocher peros. So, for example, let's say before the produce comes to market and the seller does not yet have the merchandise, nikna hamekach v'imnisyakru haperos aser liten kishar shenifsak eliyiten kishar shel heter. And so they make a transaction such that the buyer says, I'll pay you X, I'll pay you $100 for the produce. And then the price when it comes to market is actually 120. So then, Asr litin kishar shenifsek eliyitin kishar shel heter. You actually have to pay the guy 120 for the produce. Vimrotza halokech lekabel kishar hayoker ein hamocher yachol levatel hamekach v'halokech yachol lachzer bo shelo yitain kishar hayoker. If however the buyer wishes to pay the more expensive price, the seller can't nullify the sale just because there was an aspect of interest involved, where he said, "Give me 100 if you give me the money now, and I'll give you the produce that's worth 120 later." The same example that we saw with the Svar. Okay. Okay. Next. These are all examples of what we call mekach tos, where the sale sometimes can be nullified and sometimes the sale can't be nullified. So that's the commonality in all of these questions.
So weren't these real life situations that they are now?
In this sefer, I don't know whether the person actually encountered all of these circumstances. I'm assuming that possibly yes. Next shaila. Ruvain shirotza liknos bayis o chanus mishimon. Ruvain wishes to purchase a house or an industrial area from Shimon. The achein hiskim Shimon limkar, and Shimon agrees to the sale. Yes, I'll sell you my house, or yes, I'll sell you my business. V'sichmu beinehem shesach kach v'kach yitin Ruvain al habayis, and so they came to an agreed upon price. Va'asu beinehem shtari knasos shelo yachzeru bahem, and they drew up contracts that would impose a penalty if on the party that pulled out, like you have to pay a penalty if you don't, or you have to put down money, and if you pull out, you have to
You don't get that money back.
You don't get that money back, or if the seller pulls out, he has to pay a penalty to the buyer. La'acher kamazman nasa hamecher ala shekodem gemar hamechach shebein haskama v'hamecher bo'u goyim oganovim v'kilkulu bebayis hatzeva v'akru chalonos udolasos v'shibru zuchuches. However, between the sale, between the agreement for sale and the actual completion of the sale, vandals came and vandalized the property. So they ruined the paint of the property. They broke windows and broke down doors. And so there's been a depreciation of the property because of vandalism. And so the buyer, Ruvain, let's say, wants to nullify the sale based on the depreciation that has occurred as a result of vandalism. Ha'im hadin im Reuven, or you could say there was a fire and there was fire damage. So the question is, does Reuven have a right to cancel the sale? O sheshimin yachol lomar lo, shenitein latakin es hakilkol, v'yachzer habayis lekatmu, so ve'inat yachol levatel hamekach. Or what if Shimon says, I'll restore all the damage? In other words, I'll repaint, I'll reinstall the windows, I'll get the doors fixed, and everything will be restored to the condition that it was in when we agreed upon the sale. Can Reuven the buyer nullify the sale in a situation where damage occurs to the house in the interim? What do you say?
What happens they already signed the two?
They already signed the sale agreement. There were even penalties that were built in if either party would back out. But Reuven claims I have a right to back out because substantively the property has changed. It's not like the market just fell out, because that would not be a reason to back out. Just because there's depreciation in the real estate market does not give you a right to back out, because you made an agreement. But here there's substantial change to the property itself.
I thought you said that he fixed it up the way it was before.
Shimon says he will fix it up.
We'll fix it.
Reuven says, I want to cancel the sale. Look at what they did to this place. These ganovim. Okay. Yeah, he said goyim or ganovim.
Correct.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
Goyim o ganovim. Yeah. Because
So
a
you say
goy,
the goy or ganovim, it's not the yid, but here
That's right.
maybe a yid is a guy.
yeah. So, right. So the question is, does Reuven the buyer have a right just to say, based on that itself, I don't want to, I want to just call it a day. Maybe Reuven gets cold feet because he sees it's a bad neighborhood. Or maybe he gets cold feet because there could be any number of reasons why he gets.
I don't buy it, and you need probably buy a certain date, and not something that means.
Yeah. Yeah, there
Right,
could,
the
there could,
closing date was September 1st, now they has to fix it up, even though it'll be the same, it's gonna be November 1st. Yeah.
oh, well, Shimon says, no, I can get it fixed by the closing date. I can get it fixed by then. I'll take care of it. I'll get everything back to its original state.
But you would think if he returns it to the same state that it was before, within the same time frame, he can't pull it,
Okay,
I would think.
let's see. So he says, tshuva, kol mum shehu beguf hamekach, yachol hakoine levat lo kishelo nitein letakno. Any kind of defect that exists in the body of the merchandise, the buyer can nullify the sale when it's impossible to fix. O im yitukan yera'eh kemekach acher legamri shetikein. Or once it's fixed up, it's like a completely new product. O shelo nitein letakno lachzir l'shleimuto mibli lahotzi hotzaot merubot. So, or if let's say the cost of repair exceeds the value of the merchandise, nechshav kemum gamor v'hakon yachol levatel hamekach. In all of those three instances that I just mentioned, let's go through it again. Number one, it can't be restored. If something breaks, sometimes you'll fix it, but it'll never be the same. So that's condition number one. Another condition that you can void the sale is that it's going to be, the way that it's fixed is in such a way that it's a completely different, it looks completely different. The aesthetics are completely different. You know, I fall in love with a girl and then, God forbid something happens to her and she gets the plastic surgery, but it's not the same, or whatever, so whatever. Or condition number three, or it's going to cost an excessive amount of money to fix it. So in those three cases, either party can nullify the sale.
Pittsburgh, another, if you fix it up, now it's gonna be better, and you ask for more money.
Yeah, there could be that situation as well. Let's say the Ganovim break the windows, and now the guy puts in tempered glass
Right,
windows.
expensive,
Yeah.
and say, hey, I need another $5,000
Yeah.
because this is,
Right,
it can go both ways.
right. אבל מום שניתן להחזירו כמו שהיה מתחילה, אינו מבטל מכך. But barring those three examples, if I have a merchandise that we agreed for the sale, and something happens to it, but I can fix it and restore it to its original state, that does not nullify the sale. V'lachein. Now, what if Ruvain wants to argue, once a window is broken, it weakens, or let's say they broke through a wall. So the guy says, don't worry, I'll fix the wall. But he says, no, but you got to fix it in such a way where you just completely cut out a whole part of the wall and lay the bricks all over again. I don't want you to fix it in such a way where it's going to still be unstable or it's not going to look nice. There could be, so you'd have to be able to stipulate that it has to be a complete restoration. ולכן ראובן שמכר בית לשמעון בעיר אחרת, ונתברר שקודם גמר המקח נכנסו גויים או גנבים לבית וקלקלו משהו בבית. So he says, and therefore in this case, where Reuven, see, this is, he's completely switched Reuven and Shimon. This is the lack of accuracy in this sefer. So Reuven sells a bias to Shimon in another city. V'nitbarer shekodem gemar hamekach nichnusu goyim oganovim l'bayit v'kilkalu mash b'bayit. And the buyer discovers that vandals came into the house and messed up everything in the house. Im hatseva, whether it could be, maybe it was the paint, osha akru delatot v'chalonot mimakomam, or they completely uprooted the doors and the windows from their place. When we went to Israel, and we went up north during the war, we saw houses that had been hit by Scud missiles. And, there's no way to fix certain houses, because the entire frame of the house was shifted. It shifted because of the impact of the explosion, so that you could see door frames that were totally mangled, and there was glass everywhere. We went into a rabbi's house because he had requested that his son retrieve his farm, and we saw the shrapnel damage. People talk about damage from shrapnel. You really understand shrapnel damage when you go look at the after effects. Some of the books we could salvage, but other svarim had either pieces of glass or pieces of metal or pieces of plaster that had just cut through the safe. And you just had to put it in Geniza. There was nothing you could do to it. So in any event, and that's why the Mamad, is such an important place to go, because, the hope is it'll protect you from those kinds of things. So, Hadinim Ruvain Vein Shimon Yochel Achsaber. So then the buyer can't renege on the deal if everything can be restored. But if there's damage that's done to weaken the structural integrity of the house, even if the seller says he'll fix it, but it'll never be back to the same that it was, because the structural integrity, like it goes down to the foundation or whatever. So then then the buyer is allowed to retract. Okay, we'll continue this tshuva tomorrow.
You sell a car in the time that
It gets flooded.
it gets flooded or has a car accident.
It gets a car accident, yeah.
Or the frame is twisted.
Right, the frame,
could be
the front end,
twisted,
yeah.
but the shed-
No, the front end, you can never,
shed, so-
never
so what-
start.
In the case of that house, that would have to be taken down and
Rebuilt
rebuilt.
up from
Yeah,
scratch.
yeah.
What did they do?